So I enjoyed Dorn so much on the last podcast with Whitecross that I decided to have him on immediately again. So thanks for coming on the show at short notice.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed it myself the other day, and I've been anticipating this ever since when you asked me to do this one. I couldn't wait to do it. I love to answer questions and I like to tell stories. So I'm a storyteller.
So I didn't realize that you were like the kingpin of white metal until after the podcast where you sent me this list of like 19 bands that you're working on. And you've been working with Petra since like the 80s, filling up massive rooms for this Petra concert. That's an amazing
Well,
story.
now I have to correct you on that. I'm not presently working with Petra. They are doing a lot of things in conjunction with Whitecross. So I'm working with Whitecross, and it just so happens they're working doing some shows with Petra. So I I have worked with Petra, but that was many, many, many years ago. Many years ago. Actually, that was the first concert I ever promoted back in 1980. I think it was in 83, 1983. And I made a deal for them to come and play at a little college in Pennsylvania, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which it's now called the University of Valley Forge, but back then it was Valley Forge Christian College. And I brought Petra into their very little chapel auditorium. We sold it out capacity, standing room only. And I said to myself, Dorn, you're a natural promoter. I mean, this is what you need to do for the rest of your life. So I immediately booked another concert and had it at the local high school. And it turned out to be such a bust. Hardly anybody came. And I ended up selling a car to pay for that show. And I guess any normal person at that point would have decided, you know what, this really isn't your calling. So you should probably quit doing this before you lose everything that you have. But no, I decided to keep going. And I went for 11 years and promoted and worked with about 52 bands over 11 years. And we never broke even on a show, but from the point of selling the car, I never had to take money out of pocket again to pay for the shows. People would step forward and donate. And so every band that came to play for us left town paid for what we had guaranteed. And I have to give all the glory to God because it wasn't through us. I was only making about $4 an hour at the time. So there wasn't a whole lot of room in the budget to pay for shows, but God provided. So anyway,
What are the biggest budget items in a show?
uh, wow. It's I would say today with what people expect from the show, like sound and lights, those are really big expenses to put on a show because people don't just come to hear the music anymore. There has to be some sort of a show behind it. And I think you're going to be seeing more and more. It's going to be becoming more and more high tech all the time, especially with AI making its self-known. Um, Shows are becoming bigger and bigger and more flashy and whatever. I think that's going to be the biggest cost.
I'm always amazed about how much work goes into the lighting. It's almost like writing software where every sort of beat and bar and chorus and verse is like wired up to a whole bunch of sequences. It's almost more
Yes.
complicated than the actual
Yes.
guitar solos and those kind of parts.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually I'm 69 years old, so I've lived through a lot of development of the technology, and it really blows my mind when I see what's available today and what we're capable of doing um, to just make a show come alive. I work with a band called Iron Wrath, CG Reich. They've been around since the 80s. Um, they they do a full cinematic show. I mean, it is multimedia going on. Literally, it's like watching a movie video and watching their show at the same time. It's absolutely amazing. They've done a 17 song video movie which you can see on YouTube. It's called Iron Wrath. Iron Wrath's Master Storyteller, Iron Wrath's Master Storyteller. And I believe what you see there is the future of concerts, rock concerts.
I think the future really is live performance because so much stuff now is automated with like AI.
Yep,
Everything's so easy to get online. There's the subscription
yep,
services. So I think that whatever little money remains is going to be something that gets you out of the house, like a cinema, and
yeah,
seeing those people perform live is still the
right.
only way to go now.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things I enjoy the most in life is going to live shows. I, I have a friend named Chris Gatto that works, he's a writer for the magazine Heaven's Metal. And he and I log a lot of miles on the road going to shows, going to see shows. He's my best buddy as far as going out for those. And that is what I look forward to so much every year is how many shows are going to be available for us to go see. And as you said, it becomes more and more AI kind of scares me in that I think eventually, if we're not at a live performance, you won't know whether it was actually real people doing those shows or not because AI can reconstruct everything and make it look like the best live show you've ever seen, and it might not have been a live show. Um, so if you go out to a live show and you can see the people up there on the stage and you get to experience the effects of everything that's going on, um, that's what it's all about for me. That's the thing that I like the most about it.
So I see in your T-shirt there you have those 19 bands. What is your role for all those bands?
Well, we've excuse me, we've gone through some changes. I say it's morphed. When I first started out, it was just a few bands. It grew to 12 bands. And basically it was like managing and or booking concerts, being a talent agent. And as it grew and grew, and I started talking to the bands and hearing the stories of them out on the road, and it has changed. It's changed quite a bit. I mean, I'm constantly looking for venues and places for the bands to play, but the biggest and most important role of Darthplumber Artist Management right now is we're building a fund so we can actually support the bands while they're out on the road so that they don't have to do any harm to their family budgets. We want to see them able to go out and minister the gospel without I mean, any encumbrance. We don't want them to be held back by the need for funds. So that's what we're doing. We've become more of a support system. It's actually we're now Darthplumber Artist Management doing business as the Metal Missions Mobilization Fund. And so as the fund grows, we will support the band so that they can go out. Bless you.
Yeah. So when you say managing, what does managing involve?
Well, it's there are two different things. There's managing and then there's representation as far as a talent agent. And the two get mixed up sometimes, but a manager actually has a lot of control and influence over the band as far as giving advice and saying, yeah, do this, but don't do that, different things like that. The manager's job is to try to secure a record contract and find a talent agent, different things like that. A talent agent, their job is to get the band gigs. And so it depends on the hat I'm wearing any given day, what I'm doing. I do try my best at finding venues. I do a lot of traveling and meeting with people that own or run venues to try to get them to consider taking on Christian music. Um, We have one right now that we're working on here in Pennsylvania. It's a very big amphitheater, outdoor amphitheater, and we would like to give birth to a Christian metal festival. And we're working on right now, starting out with a 1 day festival. It would be 6 to 10 bands, but it's in a beautiful, convenient location. I mean, major access, camping facilities, hotels within driving distance. It's just a really great place. And so we're working on things like that. And then I try to get our bands into as many festivals as possible, but we also like to work with small churches. And so if a small church wants to do community outreach, that's where we step in with the fund and help churches that don't have a big support base so that they can do these concerts without jeopardizing their budgets. So it's a lot of things. Managers pretty well lead and guide the band. Talent agent finds them work. So I hope that answered the question.
So yeah, let's say you've got a church that's got 200 seats. Can you just step me through the whole process from start to finish of how you would run a show in that church?
What was the original question about seats? It kind of broke up a little bit.
Well, if you have like 200 seats, so you've got like a
Oh,
reasonable
okay.
sized church.
Okay.
What's like the from the start to finish, the whole process to running a successful show, and including like transport, logistics. I'm most interested in logistics actually.
Okay. Logistics is a really, really, really big question, big point. Um, we recently itemized the costs of a trip for a band to come from the West Coast to the East to do a show. And when we added up all the costs, all the ancillaries, all the required things, airfare, meals, hotel, rental vehicles, different things like that. And honestly, it is hard for a band today to go to a show with all those things involved for less than $5,500, $5,500.
That's
And that leaves,
that's less than I
that
thought it was going to
actually,
be.
after expenses, that leaves very little for the band's pockets. I mean, they would be getting a pittance out of all of that money. And so that's one of the things that small churches, small venues, we've done a lot of churches that have 300 seat capacity. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but you have to charge for tickets. There's different things you do. The band gets to sell merch, but we work with the church to try to make it as easy on their budget as possible and still be able to minister. And it for me, it is all about the ministry. I guess the biggest thing, the biggest first step for me when it comes to putting a band in a venue is I start praying. I start praying and say, Lord, this is your ministry. Bless it. Bless this church. Fill the place. Um, we did a show. We did a show in Illinois last year. We had a cancellation, and I knew this small church that wanted to do a concert for outreach. And I called them up and said, we just lost a date, and I was wondering if you'd want to pick it up. And I said, the big problem is there's only 8 days left to that date to promote it. And the pastor said, oh, wow. I said, well, we're willing to really work with you to make this possible. And so we talked about it. We came to an agreement. He went before his board. The board decided, yes, we'll do it. So they picked it up. By that time, there was only 6 days left to promote it. And I started praying. I started praying. And the overall consensus of the band and the church was 30 to 40 people, 300 seats, but 30 to 40 people. That's what we're expecting on such short notice. And I kept saying, no, I believe God's going to pack this place out. And it was amazing. The night of the show, it was packed. It was packed. And I was standing there as all these floods of people coming in through the door. And I was talking to a young man that went to the church, and I said, "Is this all of your parishioners, all of your church people?" And he said, "I haven't seen half of these people before in my life." And the majority of them were wearing biker colors. So
That's great.
God opened the doors for a flood. I mean, the place was packed, and the church was so excited about it. They just did it again in February. They had the
Great.
bands back again for another show. And I just say, God is in this movement. Heavy metal is one of the best tools for reaching people, because there's a group of people out there, I say from 35 to 70 plus, who love hard rock and metal music, but they're not being fed, especially by the church, because everything now is mainstream praise and worship bands. And a lot of these people won't go to those concerts, but there's nothing being provided to them. So I believe God has started a revival amongst those people, and he's raised up these bands to carry his word forth so that souls will be saved before the last days. And I look forward to the potential that's out there. And if anybody's listening right now that has an opportunity to serve the Lord by bringing a band into town, or flying them over to Europe or whatever, we have bands that are ready to go on a moment's notice and preach the gospel, because there's no compromise, no compromise. It's it's put out there in front of the people without fear. So
I'm surprised that $5,000 covers the expenses of, is it only one night or is it 2 nights, three?
uh, that is just to get them there. We're looking at it could be anywhere from 2 to 5 nights. At that point, then it gets a little bit hairy, because that's not really figured in. When the show that we actually itemized was for, I think, 3 nights, 3 hotel. Um, that was a pretty reasonable figure. The only thing that could change that is that depends on the venue providing backline. They would have to provide all the amps and the, lights or whatever. If a band has to bring those in, that makes the price go up quite a bit, quite a bit. And of course, if you can drive, if it's not a long distance and you could drive to the show, that really lowers the cost a lot too. But people look at certain bands. There are some bands out on the road right now that are getting $50,000 a night to do a show, but they are traveling with extremely expensive production. And it takes a lot. I mean, that you may be talking a flying date for a band of 4 to 5 guys, as opposed to a band of 4 to 5 guys with about 20 to 30 technicians that have to run all the gear, have to run all the production.
What band was
So
making 50,000 a night?
yeah, yeah,
Which one?
yeah. Which one? I
Yeah.
I honestly I don't want to say it's
Okay. It's all
the
right.
one in particular. They're not heavy metal. They're not hard rock. They're more of a praise and worship band type of band, but they get a lot, but it's to cover the expenses of the production. And they do draw enough to pay for it. So that's another thing. A band a band that requires much has to provide much. They have to be able to draw the crowd. They have to be able to draw the crowd. The bands I represent, they are worth much more than what they ask for to go out and do a show. But it's a matter of what is current, what people are coming out to see. And I believe as this develops with the hard rock and heavy metal, it's like bringing back the 80s to me, because back then there were shows everywhere. Shows were happening all the time with Christian metal bands. I mean, my production company back then, we debuted Christian metal on the East Coast. I negotiated the first Striper trip to the East Coast. I brought Barren Cross and Bloodgood and all these other bands to the East Coast for the first time. I mean, Whitecross, it was their first show on the road outside of their home state when I brought them to Pennsylvania to do the show. So I do have the experience, but a lot has changed since back then. And Christian metal and hard rock is not as big as it was because a lot of people have quit promoting it. Let's put it that way. But I believe as it comes back, those that really enjoy it, that really they love it and recognize it for the ministry capability, they'll come out. They'll come out and they'll pack places out. So a 200 to 300 seat auditorium, you might not be putting as much into it as far as finances, but it doesn't cut down on the cost for the band because all the logistics are the same. If they're coming to play at a festival that's going to pull 25,000 people, they're still going to have $5,500 worth of expenses to get there, unless they live right around the corner and they can drive there. So it's hard to put a real schedule of events, but the biggest thing is prayer and promotion, prayer and promotion. And it requires promoting on the part of the band. It requires promoting on the part of the venue. Word of mouth, social media really gets the word out now if something's coming up, and a lot of people respond or react to that. So that's what I have to say about that.
Do you think that more bands are living remotely and disparate from each other nowadays versus the 80s?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is one of the biggest factors in the logistics, is because bands can practice over the internet. They can record over the internet. When we did the X Sinner album, World Covered in Blood, the lead guitarist was in Australia. The lead singer was in the LA area. I think the drummer might have been in the LA area. The bass player was in Las Vegas, and they recorded online. And then it got sent up to the producer, the engineer up in Nova Scotia. And then he did the mixing and the mastering and got it ready for pressing. So we live in a world today where bands are not all located in the same garage anymore. It's not like they're with each other every day of the week. So you would have people flying in from Texas, California. One band, their lead singer is out here in Pennsylvania, and they're in the Midwest to West, where they're located. And so the expenses of getting them there is the biggest part of the cost now.
Yeah, so instead of having a tour bus where they could sleep in a tour bus,
Yeah.
you're paying for expensive airplane tickets.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The biggest, the ideal plan, if you're doing a fly-in date, is to fly into one location and then rent vehicles and do a tour where you could drive from place to place and then fly back home from the last date. So if you can do 3 shows in a weekend, that actually would become very economical then, because you're only doing a fly into one and a fly out from the last. It would just be vehicle rentals in between. So
That sounds like a little bit of software that I could write to help automate that.
yeah, yeah, it's believe me, the bands that I'm working with are very frugal. They search for the best prices. They try to keep it as economical as possible, even doing without a lot of times to make it happen. Um, it's really hard. It's not a job for just one person. it takes a group of people to work together to really make something happen like this. A big or small venue, you're still going to work to make it happen.
So can you tell me about these bands that you're working with?
Yeah, it's quite a few. The ones I'm working with are Fear Not. Trytan. Weapons of God.
Strong with unity, that's where we stand. To live eternity in the promised land. With every devotion, we will defeat the waves of temptation the devil will bring. Stay firm, stay strong. God's armor on. We are the weapons of God.
Images of Eden. Inner Siege.
When I was in my youth, something was missing in my life, never knowing where I belong.
Messenger.
Like I'm gonna be king. In this calling, I win or lose. Every prince has to pay his dues.
3 Days Under.
You want it, you need it, you're always right there hanging on. You fight me, you define me, you make me feel I don't belong.
Slave's Wage.
Think this life lasts forever. Thumbing your nose at the truth.
Saint. Daniel Band. Primal.
Trucks are loaded, even the planes. Who's meant to become another machine? Yes, there's this murders. Thank you, machines.
Divine Martyr.
It was all a lie to manipulate and get inside my mind to make me believe that it had gone way too far this time. No going back. Mistakes, the pain too great to endure. But now I'm sure you are God. I know the truth. I know it's you now. You are God. I know the truth. I know it's you. The devil knows my weakness. It ran.
Whitecross.
The Lord God, He is my shepherd. He leads me on beside the waters. I spend my days inside the house of His name. I am bone, I am skin, I am so much more within. I am fire, I am stone. I am forgiven from the horror of my sin.
Reign of Glory. brave.
Nobody knows where the grave digger goes. Boots on a shovel, kicking bodies in a hole. Burying sins better left alone. Nobody knows where the grave digger goes. Whoa, drop them bodies in a 6x4, and it really don't matter if he's seen you before. Got a list that begins with a million names, and they all end up the same. Let me tell you something. Nobody knows where the grave digger goes.
Ex-sinner. Iron Wrath.
But they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. That was more than rhetoric.
Do you remember the child in life? We saw tomorrow through innocent eyes, but in secret they tricked us with lies. So we build up walls of self-righteous suicide. Hold on through the eye of the storm. Life's at its back.
Seventh Servant.
To the angel of the judge, if I a tear arise, these things says the Son of God, who incites like a flame of fire. His feet are light, their light find rest. Suffer that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, to teach and seduce my servants to commit fornication.
And Zion.
weather. And I wonder where I went wrong. I need to feel your touch. I need to hear so much. I look everywhere, but I cannot find. I need to have you here. Without your love, I lose my mind. Is it a crime to feel the way I feel when I know it's so real? Is it a crime to feel the way I do?
So quite a few.
So I had no idea that one person could manage so many bands. Normally, I would have thought a band would have had a manager, and a manager would have a band.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have a board of advisors or directors, and they step in and take the weight off of me in a lot of situations and help to do that. That's why I began in the beginning saying that it's become more of a source to supply needs for the bands while they're out. I am constantly looking for places to play, but most of the shows will come from a promoter or someone who would like to promote contacting and saying, I would like to bring this band in. And so the bands that are in demand actually get more requests, more calls. But at the same time, I'm constantly pushing all of the bands when I contact festivals and contact venues to try to get as many of them out there as possible. Some of the bands that I have, I've been associated with for, I'd say, 40 plus years. They're classics of the Christian hard rock and metal genre. But then there are quite a few here that are what you would consider newer bands, bands that weren't around quite as long. The thing that I find very, very encouraging is the production of Christian music has become better and better and better all the time until I would say we're as good as, if not better than, what's out there secularly at this point. The technology has made it possible for a band to sound like they've been in a studio that's costing $1,000 an hour or more. So Christian music has taken giant strides. They've come light years ahead in their production capability and the quality. So there are bands out now that they sound so good, and they'd be so good live. They're so good live on stage and this and that I really, really want to see them getting out there. But yeah, it's hard. One person can't handle 20 bands. That's hard. So we rely on people sending in giving us information on venues and letting us know that somebody wants to do a show or whatever. So we get help. We get help. I can't do it by myself.
And I see that you're using a central platform for selling tickets, but like Eventbrite, does that cover all your needs for selling the various classes of tickets for an event and promotion?
It depends on the venue itself. There are multiple sources of tickets. If we're involved in a show, we're developing. We haven't developed a capability yet, but we want to be able to sell tickets right from our sites. At this point, we can give links to the sites that are covering them in that, but not one ticket outlet handles all our ticketing.
Hey, you're talking to a software developer here, man. Full stack developer.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Would you like to join us?
Let's talk more. I mean, I run a large website where we sell tickets and we use payment mechanisms and stuff like that. So.
I would like to talk about that. I was just considering this the other day. I was talking to somebody and I said about the fact that we are eventually going to have to be able to sell tickets. We need a way to sell tickets other than the Ticketmasters and Ticketrons and Eventbrite and all these others that are out there. A lot of the sites out there that are selling tickets are driving the costs up so high. And the band doesn't really make out from that high cost. So it's that's something I definitely want to talk to you
What
about after
percentage
we're
are
done.
what percentage are they taking per
What's
sale?
that?
What cut
Oh,
are they taking?
I'm not sure. I'm not really involved in that. So it's hard to say, but I know if a venue is selling tickets for, they need to get $20 to try to cover. If they go through a ticket selling agent like that, it's going to go up. I'm not exactly sure what the percentages are now. We're going through times economically here where the dollar really doesn't stand for what it used to stand for, and everything is changing. So I guess everything's going up in price. So it's hard to say what the actual percentages are today.
Yeah, I wrote this QR thing where people buy a ticket and then they have a one-time use QR thing, and you need to print anything out. You just bring your phone with the QR code and it scans it, and on the day of the event, if
Yes.
somebody has
Yeah.
permissions as a ticket scanner, then that's them
Yeah.
checked in. Save a lot of costs.
Yeah.
Didn't take me that long to do it either.
See, this is one I just bought through Eventbrite for myself. This is for the Soul Fest. So I do use Eventbrite, but
Yeah,
this was
they
for,
demand a pound of flesh as well, though, for ticket sales.
yeah. As far as I'm concerned, there's always room for more. So
What makes one band more in what the bands that are in demand? What have they done differently?
I think one of the things that makes a band more in demand is how many times they're actually playing. If there's a site called Bands in Town. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not.
Yeah, that's
But
the website that you're using for the Whitecross event this
yes,
month, right? Yeah.
yes. I get notices from them multiple times a day of who's coming through this area. They really keep your knowledge level up as far as who's going to be playing within driving distance, or even if you expand the mileage that you're willing to go. I mean, if you want, they'll cover the whole country for you. But people can go back to those types of things. There's other sites where you can go and actually gauge how many times a band is playing. There are sites that track even how many times their songs are getting played, and different things like that. It's that's what draws attention to the band. It's how many times are they playing. If you put up a tour schedule and it shows you've got 25 dates coming up, somebody's going to say, "Oh wow, maybe I need to get in on this and book this band." So I think that's the biggest thing, is how many times is the band playing draws attention to the people that would book them to do a show.
Could you not just run the same band multiple times in the same venue, and that would immediately start to stack up? You get some economies of scale there. You wouldn't have to reset up all the sound and lighting.
Yeah, do more than one show while you're in the same venue.
Yeah, at the
You mean?
same venue. So you do like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever.
That can be a little hard depending on the requirements for the band. Because when a band is going out right now, this is something we almost touched on earlier when you said about are the bands located at different, the band members located at different locations. They also, most of the bands also have day jobs. So when they go out, if they can do 3 shows in a weekend, that will work for most bands. But if you're spreading it across a week, that may require you to take the entire week off from your day job. So that's just one more hit financially, unless they have vacation time they've saved up to be able to do that.
Yeah, Americans only get 1 week off a year.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what one of my friends anyway. I was like, I was shocked. Like the UK, we get like a month off, and my
Yeah.
friend's getting 1 week off a year. It's just
Yeah. A job I had a while back, I just got to the point where I earned 4 weeks vacation, and they decided to downsize the company. So just when I got my 4 weeks vacation, I lost my job. Yeah, that was my first retirement at that point. Then I decided to retire. So, but yeah, you don't accrue vacation very quickly in certain jobs. There are some that I guess with vacations become a negotiating factor when somebody makes you an offer. They might not offer you as much money, but they might give you a couple more weeks vacation. So you can negotiate things like that here.
so. When you're saying that some of your bands sound better than some of the secular bands, what are they doing differently to improve?
I think a lot of it has to do with technology, because the Christian artists, the musicians in that, have always been top notch. They could play aside of anybody. It's just that budgets for recording Christian projects were never as high as the ones for secular projects. At one point, I was approached by a conglomerate of different music bigwigs, and they were very interested in the band Zion, and they were talking about taking us on because of the band Zion. And I was asked if I could produce 3 albums in a year for $300,000. And honestly, up to that point, we hadn't spent more than $12,000 on any one project. So I looked at the man, the lawyer that asked me that question. I looked at him and I went, wow, that is really a tough question, but I think I could do it. Now, that would have opened the doors. $300,000 would have opened the doors to do a great mainstream equivalent recording, a production. That would have opened the doors for it. Unfortunately, in the Christian music industry, we didn't have that kind of funding to do a lot of shows. I mean, a lot of recordings. So today, the technology that's there, you can have the best studio in the world on your laptop. You can have it on your computer. I mean, I can go on some of the software that I have here, and I can duplicate any guitar sound in the world that's ever been done by name. I can punch in Eddie Van Halen and it'll give me the specific guitar tone and sound for what he did. So I would say it's a technological thing. Today we have the technology to be able to put out a first-rate, top-notch project, and it's evident in what these bands are doing. And the classic bands are back in the studio now doing projects. This new Whitecross project that's coming out is phenomenal. I can't wait for the release party in another week. I can't wait for this thing to get out there for people to hear it. It is so good. Excuse me. The band Deny the Fallen did a project last year called Echo Chamber. Some of the best drum sounds I've ever heard on a Christian album. I mean, just phenomenal, phenomenal. I would put their basics on their recording up there with Disturbed, or a top-notch secular metal band. That we can get the sounds, we can get the quality that might cost that. I mean, a big name record company might put out $1 million to do a recording. We can get the same results just about with our laptop. So,
And
and
soon
if
that
anybody's out there, if anybody's out there and wants to challenge me on that, it's okay. Change my mind, but I believe that's the way it is. Christian music has come light years ahead with what they're able to put out because of technology.
I'm looking forward to getting my first LP that you've got behind you there.
Yeah, yeah. I can't. This is mine. You'll get one that's in the sealed wrapper.
Come on.
That'll be coming out. That'll be going out this week. I'm also going to send you the CD with it so you can listen to it. I don't know if you have a turntable available right away, but this is a special.
Yeah, my Beamer's got a CD player.
This is a special project for me. When we recorded,
Wow.
this is a re-release of an album we did back in 1989.
So kind of you.
We never put it on vinyl back then. I always wanted to, but CDs were becoming so big, we went right to CD. As a matter of fact, we were one of the first Christian record labels that did an ADD CD, which was analog, digital, digital. Up to that point, most of them were AAD or even all analog. So we did one of the first digital CD releases, but we never put it on vinyl. So when we relocated the original 24-track masters a few years ago, I talked to Rex Scott, the lead singer of the band, and I said, we have to put this out on vinyl. So we had it remixed, remastered, and reissued on multicolor vinyl. And I think it turned out pretty good. We only pressed 1,000 of them. There's very few left, but not one of them is the same. The patterns on the vinyl, because of the injection process, makes each one unique. So instead of getting one of 1,000, you're getting one of one.
Yeah.
You're getting the
That's
only
awesome.
copy like that. So a lot of people say, don't unwrap it. No, I say unwrap it and take a picture of it and let me see what it looks like, because I need to prove to myself that not one of them looks the same. So
Yeah, eventually I want to have like a studio where I can have like things that my podcast guests, that I've had on the show,
yeah,
have like and behind on the wall, and this is one here, Grand Pause, the Adam, and
mhm,
yeah, unfortunately Adam passed away a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3
yeah,
weeks ago, but that's he was. Yeah, I wanted to
yeah,
have him on the show again, but this life, you never know when your time is up.
when it's time, it's time. Yeah, I've had a lot of friends pass recently. It's so many musician friends have passed. And then friends and relatives as well, but so many musicians have been lost over the past, I would say, 5 years.
Yeah, shocking,
Very,
really.
very many. Yeah,
Yeah, it's so sad every time I hear of a musician that I've listened to
yeah,
passing away. It's just like,
yeah.
hopefully those fine guys find Jesus.
That's the thing. That's the one blessing with Christian artists that have passed away, is we know we're going to be reunited someday. And I just I pray right now. I have a lead singer, non-Christian lead singer, who I pray for every day, that the Lord would open his eyes to the true freedom that comes from Christ. He's been very vocal lately about providing freedom. And I made a pact with my grandson that we would pray for him, that Jesus would open his eyes to the real true freedom that's available. But we need to do that. We need to lift them up. I mean, so many of them were our heroes when we were young, as far as the music they made in that, and to think of them dying without hope is a very touching and moving thing. We need to hold people up in prayer every day.
Yeah, for me, everybody that I've known I want them to know Jesus. And also everybody that I know of, like I've participated in watching whatever their films and music is, I also want them to know Jesus, just because I would like to. And in a sense, it's almost selfish, because I'd like to hang out with them in heaven and talk about this thing and this thing,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
catch up on the
absolutely. Yeah.
time is so short here,
And it's not out of the question. So many of them have given their hearts to the Lord. There's going to be a reunion someday like that. And people that maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, we'd have thought never would have considered Christianity, have been changing their minds and getting into a relationship with Christ. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome. And we need to encourage them and lift them up. Whenever they cross our minds, I always say, I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, 3 o'clock in the morning, with a name on my mind of somebody I've never interacted with in my life. But why are they on my mind at that time? It's got to be God. God is waking you up and saying, you need to pray for this person. You don't have any idea why, but pray for them anyway. There's a reason for it.
So is there any overlap between what you do and, say, what a label does?
Labels today don't do near as much as they used to, because we're in the age of digital recordings. Now it's all digital downloads. Very, very little product actually gets manufactured today. Most of what's being manufactured is vinyl, because there's been such a resurgence in the vinyl, in people wanting vinyl for collections and that. And I know a lot of record companies that when they sign an artist, they'll only produce maybe 100 or 200 pieces of actual product. The rest of it is digital downloads. So because of that, then the record company doesn't have near the money to spend on an artist anymore. Now, if you're a big name, then money gets spent. Money gets spent. Videos are made. We are getting into doing a lot more video, and a lot of the video that I've been watching lately is done by C.G. Reich from Iron Wrath. I mean, the guy's a genius. He puts together beautiful stuff. There's a possibility of the film I was talking about, the movie, Master Storyteller, actually being put onto Netflix. And it's amazing. So not only in the production of music now, we also have the capability to do cinematic, I don't know, what's the word? Really good stuff. That would be it. Really good stuff. So
that first track of Zion that I heard for the first time, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, it was a string puller or something like that. That first track is so catchy. I've been listening. I must listen to that 30 times now. I've got it on the loop, man. It's really, there's something about it that makes it stand out above all the other potential things that I could be listening to. It's like got that rocket ship, like some of the bands, like the band Hale, you've got like the song Panama and Jump, which sort of appeal to not just guitar players but the mainstream. And also, like that's something that a lot of virtuosos struggle with. So, like, if you look at Steve Vai and like Malmsteen, a lot of those songs are not known by mainstream. They're only liked by guitar players. So, like, how do Christian bands make those songs that stand out to just not just their own niche of Christian, but the mainstream, and they're remembered?
I honestly can't answer that question, because in the case of the Zion album, and I battle with pride over the Zion album, because it honestly was the most prolific Christian metal album of its time as when it came to charting singles.
Right.
It charted at least 5 singles off of that album. A number 1, a number 2, another one that was in the top 5, another in the top 10. It finished off in was 91 or 92. It was the number 5 played heavy metal album on college radio. And that
Really?
wasn't
So
just,
this is not just niche Christian
that wasn't
charts.
Christian radio. That was the CMJ, the College Music Journal charts. And it's that the album was the reason why so many people from the secular market, mainstream people, the number one merchandiser in the world came to us and wanted to pick this band up. CBS Sony was interested in them. But I believe it was an album that was blessed by God. I really do. David Safiro did a wonderful job with it, putting it together. And the song "Is It a Crime?" I brought a cassette copy of it home from the studio when I came back from Seattle, and I took it to the local Christian radio station because they had a Friday night, late night rock show. I mean, you had to stay up late to hear it because they wouldn't normally play this stuff. And I played this song for him, and he didn't want me to leave. He's there. I need to keep this. I have to keep this. I said, no, that's my only copyright. No, he said, I need to keep this. This needs to get on the radio. And within a couple weeks, it was number 2 on the CCM charts. Uh, AOR, all the different charts were charting this song, and it went from down on the charts. I actually have the different copies of the charts as it went up, and it was just a matter of weeks, or not even weeks. It went from down in the charts up to number 2, and the only thing that kept it out of number 1 was trying to think of the band, but another Christian band came in and went right to number 1. But then I found out they were giving away radios to the programmers that were playing it on radio. So they got a little preferential treatment on it. But the song on here, Kicking the Gates, or no, Who Pulls the Strings, I think was actually the first number 1 heavy metal Christian album, Christian song. When CCM magazine started a metal chart, this got the first number 1 single. So it was a very important album back in that time, very important. And I would say somewhat underrated because it rarely gets mentioned by people when they start talking about the 80s, but yet it accomplished much more than anything else that was out back then. So, and now you got me started on a prideful thing. I love the album. I love the album. I can still listen to it today, and it's like listening to it new.
I wouldn't say it's only prideful if you let it be prideful. If you're just celebrating quality music and achievement, and that's, I mean, what is it that Muhammad Ali says? He says it's important to be humble because if you're not, the world will make you humble, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
it was Mike Tyson that said that.
Was it Mike Tyson?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure, but it's truth. It's the truth. Yeah,
I don't think I've
yeah.
ever heard one of those modern Christian bands in any McDonald's or WH Smith down, in just a random shop. It's always secular
Yeah,
stuff. It's a
yeah.
shame, though.
See, back in 2005, my son's band made a trip from Pennsylvania to Missouri to play in a battle of the bands at the college my son was going to. And on the way, we had internet radio playing the whole trip. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. One of their songs actually came up on a radio station, an internet radio station. And it was like, I woke everybody up in the van. Hey, listen to this, listen to this. And it's like, because back then you could get played even on secular radio. When the Zion Project came out, we have testimonials from bunches of radio stations about how this song, Who Pulls the Strings, took the country by storm. I mean, it appealed, it crossed over. And I don't know what else to say on it. It's just,
What is it about that song that made it so special?
yeah. What about it?
Yeah.
I think it had all the elements that you need for a really good song. I would liken it to a classical composition like Bach and Beethoven and things like that, because it was a good composition. It was orchestrated correctly. It had all the right elements. The lyrical content was good. Everything came together in that song that is needed to have a really socially acceptable composition. That would be what I would say. Everything needed was in that song. And it had a really good hook to it too. So
I'm wanting to start a band with some of my remote friends, and we were sitting trying to record some songs to some lyrics, and I'm just sort of staring at this wall of like, just like putting stuff on down like on a blank sheet of paper. What advice would you give to me to try and come
yeah,
up with a song that stands out and is liked by people as much as something like that pulls the strings?
wow. I that's really a hard question, Nikos. That's a hard question.
It's like, how
I
do you
don't
become
know.
back? You know?
I've written some songs myself. You know, when I write songs, I dream them. I dream them. And I wake up and I go to my computer and I type in the lyrics. And I honestly don't know how to write music, but I can sit down at a piano and pick out the melody for the song. I used to work with a lady who was a really good piano player, and I would go in and sing a song to her and she would write it. She she would write down the melody and everything, and then teach it to the band. But I don't know what to say. I'm into lyrics, passionate lyrics, stuff that comes from the heart. I think much of the lyrics that are out there today in the mainstream are just a cool phrase that keeps getting repeated over and over and over. I like stories that address real life. I really do. I'm not into a lot of the compositions today are being manufactured in a room with 20 writers who just know how to write hooks and get people to listen to cute stuff. I call it cute stuff. There's a certain part of a song that they like the way it sounds, so they just keep singing it over and over and over and over and over, and it hooks people and it gets you. I have to say, some of those songs I hear them one time and I can't get the song out of my head, but it's because they've been manufactured to do that. I like a song that comes from the heart. It comes from your heart. And one thing we have to remember is Jesus said, if my name be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. And so if our music is doing that, if it's glorifying Christ, if it's lifting him up, he's going to draw the listeners to it, not a manufactured hook. He will draw the listeners to it. I really believe that.
One of my friends who's used to run a radio station for metal, he sent me the Judas Priest album the new one that's come out that he just says he can't
Yeah.
stop listening to. And I had to listen to some of the songs, and as you know, it's that very high standard of musicality. But there was a song called "At the Gates of Hell" or something like that, and I was listening to it, and I was thinking, why did people not just think about what they're saying? You know, selling your soul to the devil,
Yeah.
bowing at the altar, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. I get that people like
Yeah.
singing about this kind of stuff, but like, if you actually, it's not something you'd ever want to do, right? Because that's going to suck.
Yeah. No, 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 no. When I graduated from college, my first job assignment was 1,700 miles away from where I lived. And my wife was pregnant, so she stayed home to have the baby, stayed up at where we lived to have the baby. And I moved to Mississippi to get the house ready. And I remember driving that whole trip, and I listened to two cassettes the whole trip, just kept playing them over and over and over. One of them was Jethro Tull's Best of Jethro Tull. I can't remember what the actual name of the album was, but it was a best of album. And the other one was AC/DC Highway to Hell.
Yeah.
And I listened to that over and over, and all of a sudden it hit me like, what are you listening to here? And I never thought about it before. And it really changed my life as far as what I listen to even to today.
We need to make like a Christian version of Highway to Hell with Christian lyrics, you know? What would it
Yeah.
be? Instead of saying I'm on a highway to hell, what could we actually say?
Well, I think it's the band, was it the band Trouble back then did a song, and it went, I can't remember the name of the song, but it went, get off the highway to hell, get on the road to heaven. And it came out around the same time as Highway to Hell. And so I think that was their answer to AC/DC on that song.
Can you imagine if
Uh,
one of those really classic bands became like full on and fire evangelists, like the kind of music they'd make?
oh my goodness. Yeah. I was talking to one of my cousins yesterday about, he had brought up about Christian music versus non-Christian music and this and that. And I said, well, there's a lot of secular artists that are really starting to talk about the Lord. There's a lot of people in entertainment that are talking about the Lord now. And he said, well, what if it's not for real? And I said, well, Paul said that while I'm in prison, people are going about preaching the gospel to do it harm. Some are doing it for money. Some of it are doing it for whatever. He said, but the fact that the gospel is being preached, I rejoice. He said, I rejoice. So even if their intentions are wrong, they're still saying it. It's still coming forth. And the word of God doesn't return void. I mean, he could make a donkey talk. It's in the Bible. He can make a donkey talk and say what needs to be said. And so there are a lot out there that I think are really, it's starting to have an impact on. And when we talked the other day, when you were interviewing Whitecross, I went back through the comments on the one song, the one Whitecross video that I had put up. I went back through that and read all the comments, and there's a lot of comments. And I found the one that said, I don't believe any of this stuff, but it's a really great song. And the song was about walking through the valley of the shadow of death and fearing no evil.
So what's the funniest band story that you have, Dorn?
I think once again, I'd go back to the first show that I ever promoted, and that was Petra, because like I said, we sold out. The place was, I mean, we didn't have any tickets left, and people were starting to line up hours before the show outside. The line went past 2 blocks and around the corner, and we're all excited about this. And then I got a phone call, and it was from the band's manager saying the band's bus had broken down in Baltimore, Maryland, which was about 3.5 hours away from us. He said, I don't know if we're going to make it. I said, well, we've got a sellout crowd. I said, they're already lined up. I said, we've got to hang in there and see if they can make it. And he said, okay. Well, a little while later, a big truck pulled in, and it was the band's road manager and their head tech. And they came in with the equipment and everything. And they said, we can set up a while and hopefully the band will get here. And I said, okay. And they walked into the auditorium and looked at the stage, and the band's manager said, we can't do this show. But he said, I have to cancel this. And I said, why? He said, the stage isn't big enough for Louis Weaver's drum kit.
Yikes.
And I said, so what are you saying? He said, we need at least another 12 to 15 feet on the front of the stage. I said, well, we can build that. And he said, well, what are your qualifications for building a stage? And I said, well, I have a mechanical engineering degree from Penn State University, and my major was structural design. And he's there, oh, well, maybe you can build us a stage. So I called up the college's carpentry department, and they came flying around with tools and wood and all kinds of stuff. And we built the front on that stage, gave them an extra 12 to 15 feet. And the road manager went up, got up on the stage and jumped up and down as hard as he could. And he said, that'll handle Greg. That'll handle Greg. He said, good job. We're doing the show. Now, what was funny, and I didn't think about it at the time, was when we built it out, we covered the steps going up onto the stage. So when I was up on the stage to introduce the band, as soon as I said, ladies and gentlemen, Petra, and the lights went out and I couldn't see where I was going. And I walked off the end of the stage and ended up in somebody's lap that was sitting on the floor down at the base of the stage. But
Wow.
I'll never forget that one, because the line stayed there. The band didn't get there till 9 o'clock at night, and everybody but two people stayed. It was a father and a young daughter asked for their money back, that because he couldn't keep her out that late, I guess. And so, but everybody else stayed, and we had a packed house, and the show was absolutely phenomenal. It was great, but I'll never forget it because we had to build the stage.
So you mentioned in another podcast that a lot of Christian bands they've been treating each other or sort of infighting. Can you go into a bit more detail on that?
Now, I don't know if I understood that correctly, that the bands are infighting.
No, I heard you say some stories like it was a dog eat dog world in the Christian music
Oh,
scene.
oh, yeah, yeah. Back in the day, I mean, I saw bands break up because of arguments over whose song was going to be used on the new album. Um, they're the bands that I'm working with right now, to me, I see them as family, and I don't see a whole lot of infighting in these bands. As a matter of fact, I think it's even better than it was back in the day. Um, there was always a fight to see who was going to be the alpha in a lot of the bands. And my own son's band broke up because a drummer quit, and then when he saw the band was getting even more popular, he wanted back in the band, and they ended up breaking up over that. So it, it's always something that you have to be careful with. One of the pieces of advice I gave to most bands when I had the record label going actively, I mean, it still exists as a hobby today, but when I had the record label going, I would talk to bands. The first thing I'd ask is, who's the leader of the band? And if the band answered back, we don't have a leader, we're all equal, I would say, then I can't sign you because you're going to end up breaking up. Because a band has to have one person that can break the tie and say, yes, we'll do this. No, we won't do this. It can't be a democratic thing. It can't be, because if it's a democratic thing, then there'll be infighting and the band will break up. That's what I always advised young bands back in the day. There has to be a leader to the band, a leader of the band, somebody that has final authority and say. I'm not saying that they should be a despot. I'm not saying they should be a dictator. There should be discussions in that, but somebody has to have the ability to say yes or no.
What should be the royalty split for a song between the band members?
The royalty split between the band, usually, well, the royalties they should be split equally amongst the band members. Now, when you come to copyright and things like that, then whoever wrote the song, whoever gets credit as the writer of the song, I know you'll have a band, the producer will actually help to change a song in the studio. They'll make changes to it, and then the producer may get equal writing credits with it, but not every band member gets credit on every song. So it's a difference between sales royalties or royalties for copyright or anything or things like that. But with the band royalties, I would hope that they were getting split equally.
What's the
That's what I
difference
would hope.
between copyright and royalties income?
Well, royalties income back in the day when you actually sold a lot of product, royalties would be paid after recoupment. After the expenses were paid off, then the band would get a percentage of the sales.
Right.
Today it's like the piddly sum that you get from the different sites that have your music digitally. I mean, you might sell or get 1 million plays and hardly get any money for it. So the royalties for radio play and things like that usually come from copyright. That's for the person who wrote the song. So a lot of things have changed back in the heyday of record companies. I tell bands today, if you can afford to produce, to manufacture, to pay certain things. You don't need a record company today. You can do it yourself. And at that point, then you reap the benefits for what is actually sold and what isn't. So I think it's quite a testimony to an album if they actually sell hard product, if there's a legitimate number of hard pieces going out, because CDs or whatever, but very few people even buy CDs anymore. It's everything's digital downloads. So, I mean, you go to a concert now, a lot of the bands are selling you a zip drive. They're selling you a drive that has 75 songs on it. And you plug that into your USB port in your car or whatever, and you've got enough music to listen to go cross country. So it's so different today. It's hard to say how that kind of stuff gets distributed to the band.
So if you're not signed by a big label and they're promoting you and spending money advertising, behind you, how do you get momentum nowadays?
How do you get
Momentum, like
momentum? Social media is probably the biggest force behind most bands today. You just try to get out. If you can work social media right, I know Frank Herring from the band Messenger is like a genius when it comes to promoting posts on Facebook, on the pages, various pages and groups, and that he knows how to get to people. I mean, he doubled our responses on posts when he took over and actually took one of the posts and did the boosting on it and the promoting on it, because he knows how to do it. And one of the things he told me is you have like 3 or 4 times a day that you should post. Start off in the morning and post a song, start off and then like 4 hours later, post something else about the band. And you have to be consistent every day, pushing in order to get it out in front of the people. The only other thing is how many shows are you doing? But once again, the only way to get that news out is social media as well. So before, you had record companies that actually would hire people to work songs to radio and get you radio play. But today, that's one of the hardest jobs out there. I shouldn't say no. There's very few true charts out there today to get your music on. There are charts out there, but they're all on voting and things like that, which isn't the same as getting it into a reporting station and having maybe 20, 30, or 40 reporting stations across the country reporting that they have you in light, medium, or heavy rotation, because that got attention back in the day too. Now, there's not many radio stations that are playing heavy metal anymore unless you go internet. And then there's so many of them, and they're sometimes very hard to find. There's some great ones: Metal Onslaught, Covenant Metal Show, just so many. There's so many out there. I can't even think of half of them. I know Thomas Johns had a really good one. Another friend, I can't. It was called Divine something, and can't remember what it was, but there are metal stations out there. I've actually been looking into possibly getting a metal station on Sirius Radio, which at that point, then I'd call all my friends that have their online radio stations and get them to do a show on the station. But that's very hard to do too, because it's almost impossible to get hold of Sirius now. I got a hold of them the other day to see what it would take to start a station. And by the time I was done, I had a free subscription. And I'm saying to myself, how did I get a free subscription? I called to try to start a station. So it's really hard to get through to whoever you need to talk to do that kind of stuff. But I really don't know. Really don't know.
Well, Dorn, I really appreciate you bringing a new life into my music journey and just giving me all this interesting information about starting bands and bringing your friends onto the podcast. But yeah, we'll keep in touch and we'll see if we can do some collaborations and
Sounds
keep
good.
doing your doing.
I know there's a lot of bands out there that would like to be on your podcast if you're interested. So
Yeah, I'll be researching them and wiring it into my schedule.
sounds good. Nikos, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
You too,
Really
mate, as
enjoyed it.
always. God bless
God
you.
bless
sir.
you. God bless you.
And thanks everyone else for joining in the podcast. I hope that your musical curiosity on the logistics of running a band was satisfied, and we'll see you again shortly on the Nikos Show. See you all later.